Number 3, drivers and effects of biodiversity loss and forest degradation. Before we go to our session 3, I have some game again. This is a little review of what we have discussed this morning. If you know the answer, please raise your hand and I'll give you a t-shirt. Okay. First question. This is Ecological and ACB out. So, our participants. Number 1 question. Norman reported this morning about ecosystem services, and he gave us 4 types of ecosystem services. Who can give me the 4 types of ecosystem services? Raise your hand. 4 types of ecosystem services. You have 1 t-shirt. Okay, try. Try. Types of ecosystem services. 1. Provisioning.
Some of these ecosystem services, the biochemical cycles, like hydrological cycle. The other one could be production of materials like timbers, food, and others. Also, there is ecotourism, part of ecosystem services, habitat provider. These are some of them.
Okay, Norman actually gave us a what's that, specific types of ecosystem services. 4.
Provisioning,
1,
cultural,
2,
protection,
3.
regulation.
Okay. So you have a t-shirt, ACB t-shirt. Again, the 4 types of ecosystem services are regulating, supporting, cultural, and provisioning. Okay. Another question, just to wake you up. Okay. Not including low PDR, because the question is about low PDR. He was our last speaker actually this morning. So, he gave us the 3 functions of forest and low PDR. 3 functions. 3 functions. Okay.
Action, protection, conservation.
Okay. So the Philippine delegates are really listening. So let's give ourselves a round of applause. Okay, let's go now to our session 3. I'm sorry. We have more if you will listen this afternoon. But anyway, don't worry. Okay. Again, Norman presented to us the importance of forest and biodiversity and also ecosystem services this morning. So what will happen if we don't properly manage our forests? What are the major causes of biodiversity loss and ecosystem services? This we will discuss in our session number 3. Drivers and effects of biodiversity loss and forest degradation. Okay, this is just a review. The tropical forest ecosystem is considered as one of the oldest and the most diverse forest ecosystems in the world. We have the tropical evergreen, the mixed pterocarps, mountain, hill, evergreen, heath, limestone, and mangroves, among others. And it was reported that tropical forest ecosystems have a high number of endemic plant and animal species, and these are dependent on the health of the forest ecosystems. And resources from the area directly sustain more than 120 million people. But at what cost to the region's natural capital? Again, we have 4 of the world's 34 recognized biodiversity hotspots. We have that in the map: Indo-Burma, Philippines, Sondaland, and Wallacea. And the region is confronted with massive habitat and species loss. If we look at the graph in here, the global versus ASEAN. The ASEAN is the black one, and the global is the red one. So for plants, that's the last graph. We have about 2,000 or 1,761 threatened species according to the IUCN, versus more than 12 or 11,000 for the global. So this is, actually this was presented by Norman a while ago, the shrinking forest ecosystems. And accordingly, in the Southeast Asia, the primary threat is deforestation, because it significantly reduced the capacity of forest ecosystems to provide its valuable multiple services. If we look at the lower table, the same patterns are exhibited in the loss of mangrove forests. Deforestation and habitat fragmentation are caused by several factors. One is forest fire, and it was also reported that over 10 million hectares lost in the forest fires from 1997 to 2006. Again, deforestation and habitat fragmentation is caused by unsustainable logging practices, also shifting cultivation and agricultural expansion due to human settlements, and extensive fragmentation and degradation of forests, rivers, and other ecosystems have led to loss of biodiversity and ecosystem services. These are the major drivers of biodiversity loss in Southeast Asia. Let's deal about them one by one. But if you look at the figure, habitat change, invasive species, and climate change are environmental factors. Economic factors are overexploitation and pollution, and poverty is a social factor. Habitat changes or conversion to other uses. They classify this as silent impacts. Loss of habitat for many birds, mammals, and other animals is one of the effects of habitat changes or conversion to other uses. And also reduced pollinator activity, decline in species richness and population, and this will be solved to over reduction in biodiversity. Invasive alien species. The cost of damage caused by invasive alien species globally is estimated at $1.4 billion per annum. This was reported by the Global Invasive Species Program in 2008. When invasive alien species enter new habitats, the lack of predators and the ability to compete with native species over the food supply can allow them to dominate the local ecosystem. And invasive alien species is one of the major drivers of environmental change in the world, thus placing considerable constraints on environmental conservation, economic growth, and sustainable development. Overexploitation due to illegal wildlife trade. Southeast Asia has been targeted by illegal wildlife traders as a hotspot in the lucrative multi-billion-dollar global trade of wildlife. And over 100 million animals are hunted for bush meat. ASEAN when reported that illegal wildlife trade valued at 10 to 20 billion US dollars annually is being undertaken. ASEAN when is one ASEAN organization that is in charge of wildlife protection, and they also conduct trainings on law enforcement and also some on judiciary. So Indonesia, Malaysia, and Myanmar are the most targeted of all the 10 ASEAN member states, and smugglers frequently caught utilizing transport links through Thailand and Vietnam. Again, this was reported by ASEAN when. And accordingly, there are 13,000 metric tons of turtles shipped into China every year from Southeast Asia. So the pangolin is the most heavily traded mammal. And wild species including illegally cut timber, birds, reptiles, and mammals are traded in Southeast Asia. This is a table showing the species endangered by trade. For birds, we have 30, flowers 4, mammals 60, reptiles 4, fishes 7, a total of 105 species listed as most endangered and are therefore regulated under Appendix 1 of CITES. The hotspot countries of Indonesia, Malaysia, and Philippines harbor a number of endemic species, but also a considerable number of threatened or endangered species of birds, mammals, fishes, flowering plants, and reptiles. Climate change. This is the most important topic nowadays, and climate change is likely to become the dominant direct driver of biodiversity biodiversity loss by the end of the century, as reported by the Millennium Assessment 2005. And in Asia, up to 50% of biodiversity is at risk, and as much as 88% of coral reefs may be lost. The ASEAN region is especially vulnerable to climate change since up to 80% of its population lives along coastline, as reported by ADB in 2009. These are the other drivers of biodiversity loss: large-scale and small-scale mining, population growth, poverty, pollution, migration from rural to urban areas, poor protection standards. And these issues are complexly embedded in the development discussions. We have in here the 2010 Ecological Footprints. It reflects the trend that societies are consuming more than what the earth can provide against the following indices: cropland footprints, grazing footprints, forest footprints, fishing ground footprints, carbon footprint, and build-up lands. And this resulted to, showed that this generation is borrowing heavily from its future. So this is now the trends. Actually, this was based on 2010 biodiversity target for the ASEAN as stated by the CBD. Status and trends of the components of biological diversity. The trends in extent of selected biomes, ecosystems, and habitats is decreasing. Trends in abundance and distribution of selected species is also decreasing. Change in status of threatened species almost the same. Trend in genetic diversity of domesticated animals, cultivated lands, and fish species of major socioeconomic importance is increasing. And coverage of protected areas also increasing. Under ecosystem integrity and ecosystems goods and services, connectivity or fragmentation of ecosystems is still increasing. Water quality of aquatic ecosystems is decreasing. Nitrogen deposition is almost the same, and trends in invasive alien species is increasing. For sustainable use, area of forest, agriculture, and aquaculture ecosystems under sustainable management is now increasing, and the ecological footprints and other related concepts are decreasing. Status of traditional knowledge and innovations and practices. Status and trends of linguistic diversity and numbers of speakers of indigenous languages is increasing. And indicator of access and benefit sharing to be developed is also increasing, and official development assistance provided in the support of the convention is also decreasing. That shows the summary of our Could you please go back to the second to the last slide? No, the table. The increasing, decreasing. Okay. Okay. Actually, this is the summary that we have for the effects of the drivers of biodiversity loss and forest degradation. And this I will throw to you if this is true or not. Actually, this is a report that we got from the CBD. Any comment regarding this progress? Is it increasing or decreasing, or any comment?
It mentions that the coverage of protected areas is increasing, and that's fantastic. But there's a big difference between a paper park and a real park. You can designate a park to be protected, but if it's not actually being protected physically on the ground, then it's not doing much good to conservation or to society. And I think that if we're going to use this as an indicator on how our progress is, we should be showing whether the coverage of protected areas is actually efficient or not, as opposed to just saying, well, we've now got 100 hectares while it's protected, even though that protection may only be on paper.
Any comment from the group?
It's not common, but maybe there's some confusion. Because here we see a different color, and also the up and down and balance. So what is about the color you mentioned here?
No, just to the colors.
The red color.
Never mind the colors. They're just to catch some. Yeah. But going back to the question of Ms. Nikki, any comment? Actually, in the ASEAN region, it was reported that there are more than 1,300 protected areas. And because of that much number, the ASOEN, the ASEAN senior officials on the environment, agreed that they will select some significant protected areas. And they called it ASEAN Heritage Parks. This is different from ASEAN Heritage Parks is different from the World Heritage Sites. The ASEAN Heritage Parks depict the ecological, the representation in the ASEAN region. And usually these are protected areas that are for the protection of very special species. I'll take an example of the Philippines. We have an ASEAN Heritage Park, the Mount Apo National Park. It is the habitat of our national bird, the Philippine eagle. And also we have another ASEAN Heritage Park, a habitat of the tamarau. It's the smallest buffalo. In Gunung Molo National Park, it is a good representation of limestone of karst forest. And Kauyay National Park is another national park in ASEAN. And all in all, we have 30 ASEAN heritage parks because of their special features, because they are habitats of rare species, and that is the concentration of the ASEAN heritage, of the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity. We give some trainings to the protected area managers and also the staff of the ASEAN heritage parks, and we also